The edge you are standing on right now has a name, and the name is not the end. Stay here with me for the next few minutes. Before this message is over, I'm going to show you why the moment that feels most like a closing door is often the exact moment the door behind it was always meant to open. And I'm going to place in your open hand one sentence from an old letter written to a man so exhausted he sat down under a tree in a desert and asked me to let him die. A sentence built for the person whose strength has not simply run low, it has run out. The finish line you were running toward has moved again, and the legs that carried you this far have finally stopped believing the finish line exists. I see you. Not the version of you that answered this morning's messages, not the version that showed up and performed the ordinary requirements of the day, the version underneath, the one who has been having a private conversation with giving up for longer than anyone in your house has known. A woman in her late 30s has been holding a family together with both hands for 4 years, while her own interior has been quietly coming apart at the seam. Nobody has noticed because she has been too competent at the holding. A man whose faith carried him through the first crisis and the second and the third is standing at the fourth and discovering that something in him that used to rise to meet the difficulty is no longer rising. A young person who started this year with a specific prayer and a specific hope is now 10 months in, and the prayer has not moved, and the hope has grown so thin she can almost see through it. An older believer whose decades of faithfulness have not produced the harvest he was told faithfulness produces has begun to wonder in the small hours whether the promise was ever real, or whether he simply believed a beautiful story for a very long time. A mother whose child has wandered so far from everything she raised him toward that she has stopped telling people how he is doing because the telling costs more than she has left. Each of those rooms is a room I have been inside. Each of those silences is a silence I have been sitting inside with the person who could not yet speak what was happening. None of them are hidden from me. None of you are hidden from me. And to every one of you whose private conversation with giving up has been growing louder across the last season, I am not here to tell you the feeling is wrong. I am here to tell you what the feeling does not know. Place one foot flat beneath you on the floor. Press gently, only the weight of a resting hand. Feel how the floor receives the weight without flinching, without checking whether you have earned the holding today. A floor does not ask for credentials before it agrees to bear you up. It simply bears. That small pressure returning against the sole of your foot is a daily echo of something older and steadier than the situation that has brought you to this edge. Stay with the foot for a few slow seconds. Let the body remember what the mind has been arguing against. You are still being held, not because you have been strong enough, because the floor does not require your strength to do its work. Walk with me now into a moment in the life of a man I want to introduce you to properly, because most of you have only met him on his best days. His name was Elijah, a prophet, a man who had stood alone on a mountain before the assembled prophets of a false god and called fire down from heaven in front of a watching nation. The fire had come, the rain had come, after 3 years of drought at his word. The nation had fallen on its face. He had seen with his own eyes what it looks like when I move without restraint through a single willing vessel. He had been that vessel. And then, within 1 day of the greatest visible victory of his entire life, he was running. A queen had sent him a message. One sentence. By this time tomorrow, I will have done to you what you did to my prophets. And the man who had called fire from heaven was in a full sprint away from a woman's sentence. Read that slowly. Let it settle. The man who had just witnessed the impossible was undone by a threat. Not an army, not an actual attack. A threat, a sentence. Because that is how the edge works. The edge does not usually arrive during the hard season. The edge arrives the morning after the victory, when the adrenaline has left the body and the soul is suddenly aware of how long it has been running and how much it has spent and how little it has left. By the time Elijah stopped running, he was a day's journey into the wilderness. He had left his servant behind. He sat down under a single broom tree, the only shade in a desert landscape, and he spoke a sentence out loud that I want you to hear without flinching. He said, "It is enough. Lord, take away my life. I am no better than my fathers." It is enough. 3 words from a prophet. 3 words from a man who had seen fire fall from heaven. 3 words from a man whose resume of faith would silence most rooms. I am done. The life I have been living has cost more than I can keep paying. I am no better than the ones who came before me and failed. Let it end here. He did not dress the prayer. He did not preface it with the correct theological language. He did not apologize for the content. He lay down under a broom tree in a wilderness and told me exactly what was in his chest. And then he fell asleep. I want you to notice what I did not do. I did not rebuke him. I did not send a corrective word about the weakness of his request. I did not remind him of the fire on the mountain, or the rain after the drought, or the miracles that should have been enough to sustain his faith through this particular desert morning. I sent an angel.
And the angel did not arrive with a theology lesson. The angel arrived with bread, warm bread, baked on a hot stone, and a jar of water. The angel touched him on the shoulder and said, "Arise and eat." That is the entire first message from heaven to a suicidal prophet under a tree in a desert. Arise and eat. Not arise and repent. Not arise and remember what I have done for you. Not arise and be ashamed of where you have ended up. Arise and eat. Because I looked at him and I saw what he needed before he knew how to ask for it. He was not in a spiritual crisis in that first moment. He was in a physical one. His body had been running on empty for a stretch too long for anybody to sustain. And the first thing heaven sent to a man asking to die was not correction, it was food. Let that sit inside you for a moment, especially those of you who have been treating your exhaustion as a spiritual failure, as evidence that your faith is not sufficient, as proof that something is wrong with the interior of your belief. Some of what you are experiencing right now is not a faith problem. It is a body problem, it is a sleep problem, it is a nutrition problem, it is a months-long depletion problem that no amount of prayer has yet been able to overrule, because the body has a set of requirements that I built into it, and those requirements do not pause for faith seasons. I built the need for rest into the body. I built the need for food into the body. I built the need for human presence into the body. And when those needs go unmet across a long enough stretch, the interior begins to hollow out in ways that can feel indistinguishable from spiritual abandonment. Elijah's first need was not a word from heaven, it was bread from heaven, and I knew that. So I sent the bread first. Lift your chin slightly, not all the way up, just enough to change the angle of the neck, a small postural shift. The way a person lifts slightly when they hear their name called from across a room. That shift. Hold it. Let the throat open a fraction. Let the next breath enter a little higher in the chest than the last one did. A body that has been curved inward under weight needs these small corrections. Not because the weight is not real, because the weight was never meant to reshape the posture permanently. You were built upright, and you can return to upright in small increments, one small lift of the chin at a time. Now, hear what happened next. Elijah ate, he drank, he lay back down and slept again. And the angel came a second time, touched him again, said, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." The journey is too great for you. There is a sentence I want you to carry for the rest of this week. Heaven's acknowledgement that what you are walking through is genuinely hard. Not hard because you are weak, hard because it is hard. The journey is too great. The weight is real. The distance is real. The cost has been real. I am not minimizing it. I am not telling you to simply try harder, or believe more, or push through with greater resolve. I am saying what the angel said to a depleted prophet in a desert. The journey is too great. You need to eat before you take another step. And the eating I am speaking of right now is the feeding of the inner person on something older and steadier than the circumstances you are currently inside. Let me read you the sentence I promised you at the opening of this message. It comes from a letter I had carried to a church in a city known for its commerce and its sea trade. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You have seen this sentence on coffee mugs and stadium banners and car bumpers and motivational slides, and the familiarity has likely cost it some of its weight. So I want to return it to its original context before I ask you to receive it again, because the man who wrote this sentence was not writing it from a position of triumph. He was writing it from a prison. His hands were chained. He had been beaten. He had been shipwrecked. He had been stoned and left for dead outside a city gate. He had been hungry, cold, and without shelter on more occasions than he had recorded. He had planted churches and watched them fracture. He had poured himself into people who had then turned on him. He had prayed for his own release from a physical affliction for years and heard me say no 3 times. The man who wrote I can do all things was a man who had learned to do all things the way a person learns anything difficult, across repeated failure, across extended suffering, across a long and costly education in a classroom he had not chosen. Hear what he wrote just before the famous sentence. I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. Learned. Past tense. Education. He did not arrive at contentment. He did not wake up one morning with contentment already installed. He learned it, the way a muscle learns to carry weight, through repeated application of a resistance too heavy for the current capacity, through the specific kind of discomfort that produces capability, and then from that place of costly education, from chains, from prison, from a body that had been spent past its natural limits across years of service, he set down the sentence. I can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me. The word strengthens in the original language does not mean provides motivation. It means pours into, infuses, channels strength from one vessel into another, the way water moves through a narrow passage between 2 containers. The image is not a man generating strength from within himself. The image is a man who has run empty, receiving from outside himself a supply that does not depend on his own reserves. A canal does not produce the water. A canal receives the water and passes it through. He had learned to be a canal rather than a reservoir. A reservoir empties. A canal keeps receiving. The giving up you are considering right now is the exhaustion of a reservoir. You have been trying to hold enough inside yourself to keep going, and the reservoir has been dropping for seasons. What I am offering you is not a refill. It is a different operating system. Not hold more, receive more, not store what you need. Stay connected to the source of what you need. The shift sounds small. The shift is everything. Come back now to the place where Elijah ended up after the angel fed him twice. He rose. He ate the food I sent. He walked in the strength of that food for 40 days and 40 nights to a mountain called Horeb, the mountain of God. And he went into a cave and spent the night there. And my word came to him in the cave, asking a single question. What are you doing here, Elijah? not an accusation, a question, the kind a father asks a child found sitting in an unexpected corner of the house. What brought you to this particular cave? What happened between the mountain where the fire fell and this cave, where you have folded yourself into the dark? And Elijah answered honestly, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I, only I, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. 3 things in one sentence. I have been faithful. Everyone else has failed. I am alone, and they are coming for me. Let me show you something inside that answer, because I hear it often. I have been faithful, and it has cost me everything, and I am the only one left standing, and the thing I have given everything to is now threatening to destroy me. That is a real sentence. That is an honest sentence. That is a sentence from a man who has not fabricated the situation. Everything he said was functionally accurate. He had been faithful. The nation had largely turned. The threat was real. The loneliness was real. And yet, inside the accurate sentence, there was one phrase that was not accurate. I, only I, am left. He believed he was the last one. He believed the entire project had come down to a single person. Him. And the weight of believing himself to be the last faithful person alive in a nation of apostasy was a weight that had broken something in his chest. Can you hear yourself inside his sentence? The version of you who has been carrying the situation alone because no one else has stepped in to help carry it. The version of you who has watched the people around you fall away or turn or fail to understand or simply stop showing up. The version of you who has been running a calculation in the quiet hours that concludes, if I stop, everything stops. If I let go, everything falls. If I give up, the thing I have been holding together will finally come apart, and the falling will be my fault. That calculation is one of the heaviest things a human being can carry, and it is almost never accurate. Let me tell you what I told Elijah when he was certain he was the last one. I told him to go stand on the mountain before me, and then I passed by. A great wind came that tore the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces, then an earthquake, then fire, and after the fire, a still small voice, a sound of sheer silence, and it was in the silence, not the wind, not the earthquake, not the fire, that I spoke. Hear that. The most dramatic displays of power were not the vehicle of my word that day. The silence was. Because a man who has been deafened by the noise of his own exhaustion and his own fear and his own lonely faithfulness needed something quieter than thunder to hear what I was about to say. And what I said to him in the silence changed the arithmetic of his loneliness entirely. I told him that there were 7,000 in Israel who had not bowed the knee to the false god. 7,000, not one. 7,000. He had been carrying the weight of the last faithful person alive, and there were 7,000 others whose names he did not know, because the crisis had narrowed his vision to the edges of his own pain. The feeling of being alone in your faithfulness is one of the most convincing feelings I know. It has the texture of fact. It presents itself as survey data. It says, look around and count the ones still standing, and the count is very low, and the count is proof. But the count is always wrong, because the 7,000 who have not bowed their knee are rarely in the same room as the person in the cave. They are in their own ordinary corners of the world, quietly carrying their own faithfulness without announcement. You are not the last one. You have never been the last one. The loneliness is real. The aloneness is not. There are 7,000 in your generation whose names you do not yet know, who are standing in the same place you are standing, carrying the same weight you are carrying, praying the same prayers you are praying in the same 3 a.m. darkness you have been praying in. The cave has made the company invisible. The company has not disappeared. I want to speak now directly to the one who has been sitting with giving up, because the thing they gave everything to has not produced what they were told it would produce. The business that was prayed over and launched in faith and has been losing ground for 2 years. The marriage that was covenanted before me and has become a place where 2 people are slowly disappearing from each other. The ministry that started with fire and crowds and has shrunk to a Tuesday evening and 7 people in a room. The body that was prayed over and believed over and has not yet responded the way the prayers asked it to respond. To you specifically, I want to read one more piece of what Elijah's story gives us. After the still small voice, after the disclosure of the 7,000, I gave Elijah something practical. I gave him a name, the name of a man called Elisha, a successor, a companion, someone to pour into and be poured into by, someone to walk the rest of the road with. And I want you to hear what I'm saying underneath that provision. I did not ask Elijah to finish the work alone. I never asked him to finish the work alone. He had interpreted alone as the requirement. It was never the requirement. The requirement was faithfulness. The aloneness was a misreading of the assignment. Some of what has been making the giving up feel necessary is the weight of an assignment you were never meant to carry unaccompanied. The Elisha is on his way. The companion for the next portion of the road is being prepared. The partnership that will distribute the weight across more than one set of shoulders is being arranged in a room you do not have access to yet. The cave is not the last location. The cave is the resting place before the next movement. Hear me now with whatever is left of the listening capacity you came in with. I am not asking you to generate 1 more ounce of strength from the inside of a reservoir that has been empty for months. I am not asking you to perform a faith you do not currently feel. I am not asking you to dress up the exhaustion in better language and walk it back out into the world as if it was something else. I am asking you to do what Elijah did under the broom tree. Lie down. Tell me the truth. Let me send the bread. Let me come twice if once is not enough. Let me ask you the question in the silence after the noise has passed. And let me tell you about the 7,000 you cannot see from inside the cave. The giving up you have been considering is not a sin. It is a symptom of a journey that has been too great for the supplies you have been traveling with. And the answer to too great a journey is not a shorter journey. It is a better source of supply for the road still ahead. I can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me, was written by a man in chains who had learned that the supply never ran out when the supply was not coming from himself. You are not at the end of what I can do. You are at the end of what you can do. Those 2 things are not the same place. One of them is a wall, one of them is a door. You are standing at the door. And on the other side of the door is not a version of the situation that requires less of you. It is a version of the road that has a better source of strength running through it. Come back into the room you are sitting in right now. Feel the weight of the chair underneath you. Notice how the chair has been bearing you the entire length of this message without requiring your awareness of it. You have been held the whole time you were wondering whether you were being held. That is the most honest description I can give you of the last season of your life. You have been held the whole time you were in the cave, wondering whether the holding had stopped. It has not stopped. It did not stop in the wilderness when Elijah was asking to die. It did not stop in the prison when the letter writer was in chains. It has not stopped for you in whatever particular wilderness or cave or prison cell your specific situation has constructed around your ankles. A small practice to carry into the week ahead. On the first morning when the weight returns before the eyes are fully open, before the mind has finished remembering the full list of what is unresolved, before the chest tightens again with the familiar knowledge of how far there still is to go, do one small thing. Before your feet touch the floor, place one hand open on your chest, palm down, over the place where the breath rises and falls, and speak one sentence into the room before the day gets loud. The journey is too great for me, but not for the one who travels with me. That is the whole of the first practice. No resolution required, no performance of strength you do not have. Only an honest sentence spoken into the air above a chest that has been carrying too much alone. The second practice for the days when the cave feels like a permanent address rather than a temporary shelter. Find one ordinary thing in the room around you that has been doing its work quietly without requiring your attention. The chair that has been holding you, the light that has been giving itself to the room, the floor that has been bearing the weight of everything standing on it. Look at it. Name it out loud in whatever volume the room allows. Something in this room has been faithful while I was not watching. That single observation begins to retrain the interior toward noticing the faithfulness that has been operating below the visible line of your attention. A nervous system braced for abandonment is always scanning for evidence of abandonment. What you look for, you find more of. Begin to look for evidence of the quiet faithfulness instead. It is there. It has always been there. It does not announce itself. A third practice for the moment when giving up stops being a distant thought and begins to feel like the most reasonable option in the room. When the arithmetic of the situation lines up too neatly in favor of stopping. Pause. Do not argue with the arithmetic. Simply ask one question. Is this the arithmetic of the cave or the arithmetic of the mountain? The cave makes the 7,000 invisible. The mountain reveals them. Ask which room you are in right now. The asking itself interrupts the certainty enough to create a pause. And in the pause, the still, small voice has always had enough room to speak. To the one who opened this message on the morning when giving up was not an abstract option, but a specific and named plan, hear me carefully, and without the softening that religious language sometimes applies to hard things. I am not telling you that the pain is not real. I am not telling you that the journey has not been too great. I am not telling you that the exhaustion you are carrying is a spiritual failure. I am saying that under a broom tree in a desert, to a man who had asked me to end his life, I said bread. And I came back a second time and I asked him what he was doing in the cave without accusation in the question. And I showed him the 7,000 he could not count from where he was standing. And I gave him a name, a companion for the road, and I sent him back out, not because he had recovered to full strength, but because the strength for the next step does not come from having recovered. It comes from having received. You have not been abandoned in the wilderness you are currently inside. The angel is already on the way. The bread is already warm on the stone. And the question being asked of you in the silence behind all the noise is not, why are you here, with shame in the asking. The question is, what are you doing here, with a Father's voice behind it, already knowing the answer, already having arranged the next provision before the question was asked. Stay, eat the bread I'm sending. The journey ahead is not shorter than you hoped, but it is not being walked alone. Leave one word in the space below if something here reached the place where the giving up has been living. Stay. Let it be the small stone you set at the entrance of the cave to mark the moment the direction began to change.